You may have heard the news. Last week, we learned that The Late Show will be ending in May. Over the weekend, it sunk in that they're killing off our show. But they made one mistake. They left me alive. Over the weekend, somebody at CBS followed up their gracious press release with a gracious anonymous leak saying they pulled the plug on our show because of losses pegged between $40 million and $50 million a year.
Imagine you get canceled on live TV, and the first thing you say is, "They left me alive." That's exactly how Colbert kicked off his revenge tour. What followed? A roast so scorching it dragged Trump, Melania's crypto dreams, and a $16 million settlement into the same punchline. Trump's joyful tweet quickly turned into a public meltdown. But here's the question. What truth did Colbert drop that had Trump scrambling while the cameras were still rolling? You might think you know, but when you hear it, you'll see why laughter was the one weapon they couldn't take away.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." The president went on, "I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next." Nope, no, absolutely not, Kimmel. I am the martyr, okay? How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How does getting canceled actually make you more dangerous to the very people who wanted you gone? For Colbert, it looked less like a career-ending blow and more like someone had just cut the seatbelt before a demolition derby. The moment his live return started, he didn't offer a soft "thanks for sticking with me" or a fake humble nod. He just grinned, hit the crowd with "they left me alive," and promised something most network hosts never dare to guarantee. Unvarnished truth to power. Translation: there was no filter now and no network boss to come breathing down his neck for going too far. And Colbert wasn't the only one keeping an eye on that moment. Not long before the show aired, Trump strutted onto his social media carnival to gloat. In his usual all caps meets diary entry style, he mocked the firing, only he couldn't even spell Colbert's name right, tossing out caller like he was ordering soda at a drive-thru. For him, it was a public victory lap. The implication? Colbert was gone. Silenced, irrelevant.
On Friday, the Wall Street Journal dropped an absolute bombshell. They are reporting that in 2003, Trump sent a birthday letter to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday that was sexually suggested. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's letter featured several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with heavy marker. Yeah, it's the most inappropriate birthday gift since Carvel debuted Fudgy the Hung Like a Whale. That means Donald Trump has drawn pubic hair on every executive order.
The smugness was so thick you could pour it over pancakes. But that's what made what followed so much worse for him, because Colbert wasn't coming back as the tidy, relatively safe late-night network comedian. He was coming back like a battered fighter with nothing to lose. Think of stand-up without the corporate leash. It's like stepping into a boxing ring without gloves. You're not being careful, you're landing hits however you want to. Colbert's humor had always been pointed, sure, but now it was sharp in a way that made you think twice before laughing, and then laugh anyway. That's what happens when you realize the old rules don't apply anymore. No more, "let's not offend advertisers." No more, "maybe we'll cut that line in editing." He could now walk onto that stage and hit a political nerve without a single safety measure in place. History's full of satirists who only got sharper when someone tried to shut them down. Lenny Bruce, banned from clubs, ended up becoming the symbol of free speech in comedy. Jon Stewart's spike in political influence didn't just happen during regular years. It shot up during wars and scandals when leaders wanted less noise, not more. There's this weird pattern. Try to silence humor, and you create the exact conditions for it to get louder and more dangerous. Media analysts love their charts and graphs, but even they admit something simple. Controversy is the best advertising you can't buy. Ratings climb when there's backlash. Audiences show up curious to see what all the fuss is about, and many stick around because they feel they're seeing something they're not supposed to see. Colbert's return had that feeling. This wasn't just a comedian doing monologue jokes. It was the energy of a grudge match, except one side still thought they were winning. So here's where the real suspense comes in. What do you say when you no longer have to play nice? When you freely admit you're not here for equal time or polite disagreement? The crowd could feel it that night. Each line had the tension of a tightrope walk without a net.
That's terrible, using your signature to signify pubic hair. As strange as that sounds, the typewritten part of the letter is even stranger. That is not only weird and creepy, that is pure absurdist dialogue. It's not a behavior befitting a president, with the possible exception of President Bush, but that's it. It reminds me of the end of Waiting for Godot. Well, shall we go? Yes, let's go. They sneak into a teen beauty pageant dressing room. Because it appears to be sort of a short, creepy screenplay between Trump and Epstein that goes, voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything.
You didn't know if the next joke would just sting or cause a headline by morning. And of course, Colbert knew exactly where to aim if he wanted to make Trump squirm fastest. Because the first major blow wasn't even about politics. It was about Trump's sensitive pressure points, his money, and his public image. The parts of his existence that survive only so long as people believe the brand is untouchable. Colbert didn't throw jabs about hair, or golfing, or nicknames. He took a swing right at the cash-connected stories Trump doesn't like floating in the spotlight. He packed it into the kind of joke where the laughter came fast, but the meaning sank in slowly. The kind that once you got it, made you realize why Trump had been so eager to celebrate his supposed win. And that's where the night really took off, because what Colbert hit next didn't just poke at Trump's pride, it went after a corporate money move so tangled up in politics, image, and behind-the-scenes deals that one punchline made the whole thing look like a payoff in plain sight. What if a single punchline could drop a $16 million payout and $1 billion corporate merger all at once? That's what Colbert pulled off. It wasn't just a joke, it was a flashing neon sign saying, "Follow the money." Except people actually listened because it was funny. He took two things that sounded totally separate. Paramount cutting a fat check to Trump after the 60 Minutes lawsuit, and Paramount cozying up to Skydance in a shiny new merger deal, and twisted them into a story where the money trail looked less like business and more like a payoff. And when an audience hears that kind of thing sandwiched between laughs, the sting sticks longer. He set it up like a betrayal scene from a cheap soap opera. One moment they're paying him $16 million to make a problem go away. Next moment, they're in the arms of another partner, he said with that fake heartbreak voice. The crowd cracked up, but behind the laughter was the obvious whiff of hush money. It didn't matter if you knew all the corporate details. Colbert gave you the plot in 15 seconds. The corporate giant writes a check big enough to buy a mansion in cash, then almost immediately dives into a merger that promises more power and profits. Nobody calls it hush money in corporate filings, but dress it up with humor, and the point lands without a PowerPoint slide. This isn't new in American scandal theater. Follow old headlines and you'll see the same shadow. Big payouts before elections, sudden legal settlements that end news stories mid-sentence, deals made in quiet rooms that later leak just enough to cause public stink.
According to court records, Trump flew on Epstein's plane at least 7 times. Now, that doesn't mean he did anything illegal. But it's not a great look when you fly on the pedophile's plane enough times to earn diamond pervert status.
I would give everybody a caveat, or that's a big word, but a warning that just because somebody flew on a plane doesn't mean they're a dadgum pedophile. You've got innocent people on those flight logs that flew. President Trump has admitted he flew on those flights, and dozens of other Americans, I'm sure, wrote.
Nice try, buddy. But you can't folksy your way out of this one. Your Honor, my client is not responsible for all those doggone corpses they found.
Watergate had its campaign donations to keep burglars quiet. More recent scandals have mixed campaign money with personal payments to stop affairs from seeing the light of day. The mix of politics, money, and silence has always been one of the oldest games in the book. Colbert just managed to shrink that whole history lesson into a one-liner about boardrooms and betrayal. That's why satire keeps doing what think pieces can't. People might scroll past a 2,000-word investigative piece, but they won't forget a sharp joke they can retweet. By smashing exact dollar figures into absurd humor, Colbert made sure anyone watching could repeat the gist later without needing a financial analyst to explain it. Comedy travels fast because it makes the serious feel easy to remember. One of his best side jabs that night came when he personified the corporate deal as a high-stakes poker game where the buy-in is democracy. The laugh hit, but so did the image. These weren't just two corporations doing paperwork. This was big business sliding chips across the table in a game where the rest of us don't even have a seat. That kind of image makes even the most boring merger drama oddly thrilling, or at least suspicious enough to keep talking about. What if one late-night punchline yanked a name out of the most infamous files in modern history and threw it straight back under the spotlight? That's what Colbert did, and it was the moment where the air in the room shifted. You could almost sense half the audience lean in while the other half tensed up, because this wasn't about a harmless nickname or a golf swing. It circled one of those topics everyone in politics pretends isn't there unless they're forced to talk about it. And with this, Colbert wasn't just poking the bear, he was yanking on a live wire. According to a Wall Street Journal report earlier this year, Pam Bondi allegedly told Trump back in May that his name showed up in the Epstein documents. Not rumors, not some internet rabbit hole. Documents. For anyone in the public eye, that's ticking time bomb territory. For a guy like Trump, it's a full-blown 5-alarm fire. This isn't the kind of detail that gets a polite follow-up question on morning talk shows. It's the kind of thing that PR teams bury so deep it needs a shovel and a map to find.
I am not Donald Trump. That guy has got a lot of problems. First of all, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal just won't kill itself. Back in March, 1,000 FBI agents were put on 24-hour shifts to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records and instructed to flag any documents that mentioned Donald Trump. Join Democrats to vote to release the Epstein files. That would be a majority of Congress. So, in response, today, Speaker Mike Johnson shut down the House until September to block a vote on the Epstein file.
There's always been a red line here, a set of topics that simply don't cross into polite cable news conversation. Epstein's files sit at the top of that list. Too nasty, too complicated, too many powerful people either involved or connected by association. You don't bring it up unless you're ready to deal with fallout that can make advertisers and network executives start sweating bullets. That's why this detail about Bondi and Trump had stayed largely in the shadows, barely mentioned outside a few careful articles. Colbert knew exactly how to sneak it past the guards. He didn't point and say, "Hey, here's Trump in the Epstein files." He wrapped it inside a joke so quick that some viewers probably laughed before realizing what he had just said. The kind of biting humor that works like a Trojan horse. You think you're letting in a harmless gag, then you notice the political payload hiding inside. And the best part, once it's out there, there's no taking it back without looking guilty or petty. This move wasn't without risk. Other big-name hosts have avoided Epstein territory altogether, not because they don't know the stories, but because the cost of talking about them can be brutal. It can blacklist you from certain guests, sour corporate partners, and even put your own personal life under a magnifying glass. Late night TV has its unwritten rules, and one of them is, if you want to keep your seat at the table, don't make rich and powerful friends nervous about what you'll say next.
I know a lot of wealthy people, Jake, and they fly on these dadgum planes, private planes. If one's broke down, they say, "Hey, I got a seat on this guy's plane. Can you want to ride with us to New York?" And that's what happens.
He just picked up the daggum axe, headed to the nursing home, and chopped up the whole kit and caboodle. My client pleads cattywampus. The defense sets a spell. Okay, that's an argument that will surely resonate with the average American. What's that? The private jet's on the fritz? See if Jeff Epstein's got room.
Powerful figures have a long history of reacting badly when old records become public. Whether it's tax returns, private memos, or court documents, the playbook is usually a mix of outrage, denial, and a sudden swarm of advisors telling everyone to move on. With Epstein's name attached, that reaction goes nuclear. And for someone like Trump, who treats control over his public image like oxygen, this kind of unsanctioned reference is enough to trigger an instant counterattack. Which is exactly what seemed to happen. Reports and whispers out of his circle suggest that the moment the Epstein thread dropped, phones started buzzing. Staff shifted to damage control. Suddenly, the cheerful online gloating from earlier in the week didn't look so smart. Social media lit up with clips of the joke, people dissecting the meaning, and Trump loyalists rushing to spin it as fake news comedy. But that's the thing. Call it a joke all you want. The seed is planted and you can't unhear it. By the end of the night, it was clear this wasn't just another Trump roast. The reference to those documents had crossed the one line his world wanted to keep invisible. And the laughter? That wasn't harmless. It had just yanked control of the story out of his hands and thrown it to millions of viewers who suddenly had one more question they weren't supposed to ask. When you try to shut someone up like Colbert, you can end up making their voice even louder. The jokes hit deeper because they're saying things polite TV won't touch. That's why taboo truths wrapped in comedy stick. They're easier to share and harder to erase. Next time you laugh at something that feels a little too sharp, maybe that's a sign you just heard something important. Don't just laugh, remember it, look it up, share it. Because if the orange turd and his friends don't want you talking about it, that's probably the exact conversation worth keeping alive.